So with the new nerfs coming out, I want to give you guys what I predict are going to be the best decks after the patch goes live, and I'm going to give you one deck per class because I don't know exactly what you guys want to play, and I want to give you guys as many options as possible. First one is Death Rattle Demon Hunter. Death Rattle Demon Hunter is already the best Demon Hunter deck in the game right now. I think it's better than Fel Demon Hunter, and I think that after the nerf, it's going to be even better because Fel did well against Rogue, it did well against Hunter, and I think those decks will probably fall off a little bit after the nerfs. Hunter a little bit because it did well against Rogue, Rogue because it was gutted. And that's going to be great for Death Rattle Demon Hunter because Death Rattle Demon Hunter struggled against those two decks the most because it lacks healing. It gives you a lot of tempo, and you're able to close out games and be the aggressor in a lot of situations. But with Rogue, they're able to play too much, too early, it was too strong, and they'd finish you off with Wicked Stabs, and they'd scabs all of your Death Rattles back to hand so they wouldn't trigger, and it was super annoying. But with those being nerfed, I think that this win rate is going to go from about 51 to maybe even a whole 52%, like a whole 1% increase. Very excited to see where this deck goes. I'm 23-12 with it personally, so I can vouch for this deck, and again, worst matchups being the Rogue. And don't forget, if you like fun educational content like this, feel free to hit the like button, comment any questions or concerns, and hit the sub button with the notification bell. Let's jump into it. Next is Druid, and this one's difficult because I think that with Rogue being nerfed, Ramp Druid might rise up in the meta a little bit because there are less aggressive decks to kill it, and you can go for more greedy value packages. That being said, Beast Druid is just phenomenal. I mean, I have a couple versions of this deck, and I'm currently 10-0 with Beast Druid, and then if you include a budget Beast Druid with no legendaries, I'm 15-2. There are a couple of different decks here, but it's 1-0, 9-0, 5-2. This one's the budget version with no legendaries. You basically just play minions and spells early, but you're not an aggro deck necessarily. But then around turn 6, you play Oracle of Elune, a Saber, and an Umbral Owl, and next thing you know, you got a 2-4, 2-4-5s, 2-4-4s, and maybe a couple of other things out all in one turn. It's incredible. Not to mention Guff, which can help you get a 10-mana Kazakus Golem, giant resizing pouches, or an Ibis. This deck's got good early, mid, and late game. It's great all around. I recommend it. The next deck is Face Hunter, which really needs no introduction, but I'm gonna give it one anyway. Face Hunter is the second highest win rate deck in the game right now, and I think that its win rate will fluctuate. It's either going to go down a little bit because its best matchups of Rogue and even Quest Warrior, which is not the best, but it's a good matchup, are being nerfed and we'll see less play. So the win rate of Face Hunter might go down, but it also might go up because with those decks being nerfed, there might be more greedy value decks that Face Hunter will just eat up. There's no real way to tell, but I predict that it will remain a top 5 deck. And the reason is just because, look at it. It does so much damage so quickly that even if a control or good value deck has a decent start, if it's not really good, it'll probably lose the raw damage output of Face Hunter. It will always be a decent deck. It's a good investment. I have a budget build already out on my channel. If you guys want to build one without the legendaries to try it out first, it's up to you. Yeah, I think this deck is really good. So the next deck on this list was a little bit harder than a lot of the other ones, and that is Big Spell Mage. And the reason this is hard to put on here is because Mizaki Mage, I can't really tell you for sure what's going to happen. On the one hand, it's getting nerfed, so its win rate's going to go down. But on the other hand, two of its worst matchups, Rogue and Quest Warrior, are also getting nerfed, which should mean that the win rate goes up. So it's kind of hard to tell, so I'm just going to pick the one that I know will be strong regardless of what happens, and that is Big Spell Mage, right? It's got enough damage early and mid game to be kind of aggressive and win the game outright. It's got good enough late game to at least compete with some of the more value matchups, and you might be able to eat something good with Mutanus, get some lucky stuff off of Rune, ramp up your new hero power with your new hero occasionally, and I personally already am 20-9 with the deck, 18-8 here, and then 2-1 here, and then I guess 4-3 here. I've played a couple of slightly different variations of the deck, so point is, the win rate's like 65% or better already, and I think that that win rate could potentially go up if you know what you're doing. I really like this deck. I like it so much more than Mizaki. If you're gonna play Mage, please, please, please don't play Mizaki. Even if it's strong, play this deck. Next deck is just LIBRAM Paladin. It's ridiculously broken. It's got some of the best early, mid, and late game of any deck in the game, especially if you're able to find that 1-drop. Even if you don't find a 1-drop, it's still salvageable as long as you can find one of the really good 3-drops that give you a ton of value. You've got insane draw with Knight, Hand of a Dull, Bannerman, Stonehearth, Varian, and maybe one other one I'm forgetting off the top of my head. You've got infinite value with Lady Liadrin, insane pumps with Cariel. You take less damage because of Cariel. You have insane healing with LIBRAM of Hope. You have mana cheat. You have board wipe with Barov along with Blade Master Samuro. This deck has got literally everything you could ever want in a deck. So this is probably my front runner for the best deck after the nerfs go live, at least initially. But it might not be that forever, as some things come into the meta and might counter it, because this will be like the new deck to beat. But I think it's really strong. I have a budget deck of this on my channel where it only runs one legendary, Lady Liadrin, and that budget deck ended up going 7 and 3, and this was before the nerfs. So it's at least decent enough to be played. I would recommend checking it out before you spend a lot of dust on all these legendaries. Next deck on this list is Big Priest, Death Rattle Priest, whatever you want to call it, and I think it's just a little bit more consistent than Quest Priest, because the problem with Quest Priest is if you don't draw the right cost cards on curve, or at least in a relatively decent order, it could take you absolutely forever to finish the quest. Whereas Big Priest has a couple more win conditions with Amulets of the Undying, more big minions, N'Zoth, and Xyrella. I just like it a little bit more, but if you want to run Quest Priest, I think that they will be fairly similar in terms of win rate and playstyle. And just overall, I know this deck is kind of expensive, and Priest is probably not going to be in the greatest spot even after the nerfs. So if you don't want to play this, I definitely get it. But I do think that with the very hyper-aggressive Thief Rogue being nerfed and the infinite value Quest Warrior being nerfed, I think that this is at least in a decent spot to at least see a bump in play rate and win rate. Do I think that it'll be like good, broken? Probably not, but it'll be at least a little bit more playable, which is all Priest really needs at this point, and then hopefully they get something more with the next expansion, but that is months away. So the next deck is really interesting to me, and it is Quest Rogue. The reason why this is interesting to me is because, one, it's the deck I used to get Legend with like 3 months ago, so it was strong before the expansion, and two, the fact that it is still a top tier deck now. It is a top 7 deck, and yet of the top 7 decks, it probably sees the least play. It's also the Rogue deck that is receiving the least amount of nerfs, because the only thing being nerfed is Scabs, and Scabs isn't as essential in this deck as the other ones, because your main win condition is actually Find the Imposter, getting, this Scabs, and winning the game off of that. This one's more of just like a stall to turn a game out for a turn, not really like insanely powerful. I mean, obviously it's still powerful, but it's not insanely important like it is in some of the other decks. So keeping all that in mind, I think this is in prime position to be the best Rogue deck after the nerfs come out, and it's just because it's strong in general. Like, it's got good tempo, good damage with SI Agent and Wicked Stab over the top. SI Assassin allows you to kill off any minion, big or small, so you can potentially hit them in the face with your extra tempo. It's just really, really strong. You can try a couple of different builds with this deck. Like, I took out the Battle Master for the Wicked Stab because I like the guaranteed cheap damage over the taunts, but it's up to you. Overall, Quest Rogue, fantastic pick. My next choice is Freeze Elemental Shaman. Freeze Elemental Shaman is the deck that I did the best with when I did my budget series. I think I ended up going 9 and 2 or 8 and 2. And it's just because it's super strong, man. It's got a ton of damage. It's got good tempo. If you can get a 1-drop into 2-drop into 3-drop, you're basically set. After that, you get mana cheat. You have a minion that scales. You got good direct damage with the Frostbite, the weapon, and the Gyre Worm, not to mention the 2 good late game plays in Baron and Brucan if the game ends up dragging on a little bit too long. This deck's just got everything. It's also got a little bit of draw with Wind Chill and Sleepbreaker, and then it's got arguably one of the best 4-drops in the entire game, which is Wildpaw Cavern. Basically, for 4 mana, you can get 9, 12 stats, and if you coin it out turn 3, it is even better. This deck is phenomenal. It's relatively cheap too. Like I said, the budget version uses no legendaries, and I went 8 and 2 with it. So if you don't have these legendaries, do not fret. I would recommend just running Menacing Nimbus, because I think in general, it's actually maybe even just better than Brucan in general. I think Baron might be better than the Menacing Nimbus, but it just allows you to have a really consistent turn 2, better than just Sleepbreaker and Cage Match Custodian, and having that extra 2-drop actually helped me win a couple of games. So do not worry if you have to play on a budget. Menacing Nimbus might even be better, I'm not sure. Next is Quest Hand Warlock, and this deck is just going to be strong. I don't really know how else to put it. It's just already a strong deck, and it is only going to get stronger because one of its biggest weaknesses was getting bursted down early by, let's just say, a Rogue, hypothetically. So, with the Rogue being nerfed, along with the infinite value from the Quest Warrior being nerfed, and Face Hunter potentially seeing less play because 2 of its better matchups are being nerfed, along with Also, Mizaki Mage, which Face Hunter did well against. I think Quest Hand Warlock is in the prime position to go from, you know, a measly 52.77% to maybe even a 53% in the near future. I actually have high hopes for this deck. Do I necessarily like the deck? No, I've never really liked the deck. In fact, I've made videos about how annoying it is to me, but it does not change the fact that it will be the best Warlock deck and probably one of the best decks in the game after the nerfs go live. And the next pick, I guess, the last one is I guess, Quest Warrior. I mean, right now, Warrior has nothing going for it other than Quest Warrior. If you look on Hearthstone Replay, Warrior is the only class with only one deck on the entire tier list. At least Priest shows up on here multiple times because they're at least good enough to be in tier 4. Control Warrior is even worse than this. The only reason it even saw remote play was because it actually did well against Thief Rogue and Weapon Rogue because you could run weapon removal, you had a ton of armor, you had the Bulwark to stall out damage. Especially after that's nerfed, Warrior is going to get out damaged by some of the aggro decks and value decks, like Death Rattle Demon Hunter destroys it because Warrior brawls. Death Rattle Demon Hunter just summons a whole bunch of minions and Warrior's screwed. It's going to do terribly against the value decks like Ramp Druid and whatever that I think will see more play. It's just not going to be very good, which leaves Quest Warrior. And I think the Quest nerf is actually pretty big and will drop the win rate of this deck by about 2, if not more %, just immediately. I think Warrior is going to be one of the worst classes in the game after this nerf goes live. Just because it'll only have one decent deck, and that one decent deck will just be that decent. It won't even be good anymore. So do what you want with Warrior. I would not recommend getting into Warrior right now or crafting any legendaries or doing anything revolving around Warrior. But if you do want to play a Warrior deck, Quest is still probably best. And that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and all of the decks. I did one for every class. If you like these tier lists doing one from every class, let me know. Or if you just want to know the strictly best decks that you think are going to be out, we'll just do like a top 5, top 7 list of just these strictly best decks. Let me know that as well. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.